Hello, everyone. Hello, Sharron.
Hello, Adam.
Lovely to see you again.
And you too.
For those who can't see us, we don't have our awesome Juno jumpers on today. We're in our other attire, which is white t-shirt and jeans. So today, finance. For all those out there, we love finance and we love talking about it. And we love talking about it so much that we're gonna redo an episode that we've already shot so we can talk about finance for a second whole time, because Sharron felt that the first time was too boring and we need to make finance fun. So here we are again talking about finance for the second time. How do you feel about that, Sharron?
Yeah, take two.
Take two.
I'm going to wear a slightly different hat today.
Whoa.
I should have actually bought a different hat. That would have been fun. So I am going to put my accountant hat on today.
Yep.
And endeavoured to sort of translate the chaos to clarity in the finance space.
Can we make finance a little bit fun, please?
Do you know what I want to do today? I want to talk about numbers in.
Don't put me to sleep, Sharron.
But I want to talk about numbers by telling a story.
Oh, good one.
So when people think about the numbers, I want them to start thinking about this is a way to tell a great story about how my business can be better.
What about spreadsheets and
They can tell a great story.
yeah.
It's about the storytelling of numbers.
Good one. Well, welcome everyone for take two. Let's see how this one goes.
Yeah, so I think today we're really going to dive into understanding the importance of financial literacy in a business. I am a strong believer that the more a business can understand their numbers, the more likely they are to make great decisions to ultimately get the results that they're chasing.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose, the first thing is why business struggles with their numbers. And Shaz, we both, every client to a certain extent struggles. Some have zero visibility. Some do it because they feel that they should do it, but have no idea what they're looking at. And there is one client that I would say got so obsessed over it that overdid it, and I'd like to talk about that throughout further down when we're going to talk about some more of the models. But it's all about like what you said, telling a story, but understanding that and using that as a tool to make decisions.
Yeah.
And what we in our own businesses as well. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, and I think that what gets lost, or this is what I see, is that businesses focus on sales and growth. They love that story. There's nothing better than
story.
Right, it's a great story. I did 50% more than I did last month.
Yes.
And I had a $4 million turnover quarter.
Killed it.
All of that, right? They love it. But what they do is they ignore cash flow.
Yeah.
So, and I think that there's a mistake in saying that I've achieved this unbelievable sales and revenue growth without understanding the cash flow implication of where the business sits.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful father-in-law who ran a number of businesses, or owned a number of businesses. Nifty Nev, I used to call him. And this is Chris's dad.
Yeah, awesome.
And we used to have some incredible stories about business and his business and what he was going through. And he himself had been taught this lesson around businesses can go broke growing. And it really resonated with me in all businesses that I've been a part of, and which gets back to if the sole focus is about sales and growth, and that's the only picture that you paint financially, there is a risk attached to that. And I also tell another story, slightly digressing, but my father-in-law, Nifty Nev, his sister, Auntie Carol, I vividly remember
Nifty
being...
Kaz.
Yeah, at a Christmas family gathering. And I was telling a story about how I'd had an unbelievable win as a result of buying something on sale.
Whoa.
And I think I managed to spend maybe $200 when it was $400, and I felt so good about saving $200. And again, it just resonated when she said, Sharron, very seriously, you do know that you can go broke saving money.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
And when she said it, I'm like, what? And then when I thought about it, I went, okay, I've spent $200 that I probably didn't need to spend. But in my head, I've saved $200 and I'm ahead of the game.
That classic trap.
Right. And so I draw that back to business and I go, if we only focus on sales and revenue as the lever of if my business is doing well, that's where I think businesses get into trouble.
And I mean, I have that conversation with my wife on a daily basis, and you know, super shameless plug, but Bang and Body, you know, Mecca. Those, you know, it's like, oh, you know, you spend an extra, $50 and you get $100 gift card. And I'm like, yeah, but you already spent $400 and you had to spend the extra $50. So we're $450 down for you to get another $100. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Just another quick story, and I've sort of forgot about this, but you sparked my memory again. We actually had a client, and it was the most. We had a client start probably about sort of 4 months ago, and I have never seen this before. And it was when he came out to talk about what he did on a daily basis, he brought out this I don't even know what to describe it, like a
ledger.
A ledger. That's what it was, a ledger where he wrote down every single day different metrics of the business. And oh my God, my eyes rolled back in my head and I was like, this is the worst thing ever, crazy. You should, it should be on the computer. You can get this from zero, blah, blah, blah. And I was, when he started explaining, and one of his mentors told him it was a great way to understand your business, to put these numbers out. When he told me the story, I was like, yeah, that is actually an unbelievable thing to do. And that's his way of understanding the business. And we have to be careful, when we do the job that we do, that it's not all about best practice. That plays a part, but it's about what's best for the business and what's best for the business owner. And I mean, I love this business, and I love the owners of this business, the husband and wife. But he finds, he finds it calming and great to understand his business on a daily basis. And whether he spends 10 minutes or an hour and a half, he has an incredible idea, sense of his business on a daily basis. And I say he has far better sense of his business than a lot of our businesses that, drive everything off zero and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And so hats off to him. He's found what works for him. Yeah. And he'll continue to do that for the rest of his day. And then he shows me all the other ones that he's done over the past 15 years. And it just absolutely blew my mind. And then we are digressing a lot. And then he showed me one that I think he left it on the roof of his house and it got run over by a semi-trailer. And he's kept it as a memento. And it's this piece of shit book. It's all ripped up and everything. And it's in the pile along the other ones. And I thought, it's different to what we would view as best practice. But God, it works for him, and good on him.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about this and we talk about the financial literacy, we're not going to go into what that looks like for a particular client because, to your point, it has to be done in a way that makes sense for the business. And literally, I was with a client this week and we were talking about age receivables and how we're going to track that.
Love that.
In terms of follow up, and this is a trade client, so there's retention in there, and it's not easy to do that. What we decided, though, was what is going to make the most sense for her, that's going to give her the best outcome to get monies into the business when they needed to be paid. Yep. And if that was a spreadsheet rather than zero, then that was a spreadsheet because the outcome is what we're looking for. It's not, the path to get there is going to be different for every client. But I come back to the understanding is the important part. Yep. So getting that literacy piece up is where businesses need to start. And
I think the consistency piece, let's look at our numbers at the end of the financial year. I mean, crazy stuff. Yep. And we talk about this all the time. And, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure we might get to this, but, my accountant looks after that.
Don't talk about that. We're going to get to
Okay. So I suppose, what are we on?
Let's start thinking about, making finance practical.
Love it. Average business owner, what's the first step to getting control of their numbers?
I would say I start with keeping it simple.
Yep.
And we start with that piece a lot at Juno.
In all aspects.
Right, not just finance. I mean, we could talk about finance now, but we go, whether it's building a strategic plan, whether it's building a 90-day project plan, whether it's building a plan on a page, whatever it is, we always go, let's start simply. Because you've got more chance of execution if it's simple, right? So finance is no different.
And I'll just jump in there. The idea is to actually do it, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen amazing spreadsheets that have pivot tables and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is no one uses it, right? And it's about bringing it back to go start somewhere, even if it's with one piece of information, and then build from that, because the process of being consistent is part of the journey to understanding your finances.
So I go start simple, and I say there are 3 pillars that you should understand in your business, and that is profit, it's cash flow, and it's your balance sheet. So I go, those are the 3 key areas that you need to understand, and you need to understand how they integrate and connect with each other.
So talk to me about, you just sort of said at the start, finance isn't about spreadsheets, it's about stories. What do you mean by that?
I guess, and I say it like that because people seem to, when they don't understand something, it's a fear factor around it. So I go, if we can start to see numbers more as a story, there might be more engagement in wanting to learn more about it and understand it. Because when I look at numbers, the story that I see are there is behaviours that sit behind it. There are disciplines that sit behind it. There is consistency that sits behind it. There are all of these elements that sit behind the numbers. The numbers are just the end result. So I think if we can start to see them as a story, we will start to be making better decisions in a business as a result of the story that our numbers are telling us.
So walk us through, that sort of, we've talked a little bit, but the trade clients specifically, we sort of got, when we got introduced to this trade client, it was they were, I would say, significant risk, and it was a lot around, and when you look holistically at what that is, it was a lot around, it was just go, go, go. Heads down, bum up, go, go, go. And not a lot of time was spent either even looking or understanding. And I said this before when we were having a bit of a chat about this this episode. Head in the sand doesn't solve anything. And what it does, it just gives you bigger problems, right? And this whole thing about, and you're really good at this, bringing a conversation forward or bringing data forward to go. It's not okay to not, right? You're better off dealing with whatever it is. And, we talk, and this is getting a bit off topic, but we talk about this with, a partnership alignment, where you go, if there's not alignment in a partnership, fundamentally, you got to have that conversation, right? And you got to come together somewhat. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But you've got to be somewhat together. And by not having that conversation, and we said this yesterday, you don't want to let things fester, right? Because then they either explode. It's exactly the same with numbers, is that if you're just looking at your bank account, or if you're just looking at your revenue, or you're just looking at your client acquisition or whatever it is, you don't actually look at the finances associated with that. You could think you have a great business, but all of a sudden run out of money. And when you run out of money, it's a really challenging scenario, because if you've got no money, no one wants to give you money. And it forces you down a pathway that just inevitably gets you deeper and deeper and deeper, and very hard to get out of.
Yeah, and I think that when that happens, part of our role, though, is to come into businesses and again, bring that to life.
Correct.
And, I mean, as much as I don't, I'm not that accountant anymore that I was when I first started.
Oh, but you were an accountant.
I was, and I still get, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, but I'm going to use the word, I get joy out of bringing the numbers to life, to then get business owners thinking differently about what's going to work for their business in order to get the outcome that they're looking for. So this trade client is a great example, because without bringing that to life, they were never going to be able to push that business forward. So whilst there was some uncomfortable, awkward courageous conversations that needed to happen in those first few weeks of the engagement.
Yep.
That is what enabled us to set some really clear weekly dashboards. It set some cadence around what margin were we looking to achieve, how were projects performing. Every week we would drill in from a materials to a labour to an hours to a completion to an invoicing to a payment. We went through the whole cycle, and it was at times laborious for those business owners. Right, I'm not sitting here saying that they enjoyed that process. What they did enjoy, though, 3 months later, was talking about cash in their bank that was significant to the first point that we'd started where there was none.
And I think, when you look at the outcome, and we've got to be, in these types of podcasts, it's we've got to talk about a little bit more about the outcomes, but specificness, they went from 2 to 12% net margin. And you go, when you look at a shift of 10%, that is like astronomical in the space of time. I think it was 6 months, but that is a huge. Now, 2% is not great, right? 12%, we're on the right pathway, but that is just, and that was, I mean, we can attribute that to digging down, understanding what was going on, particularly around the numbers perspective. There were a couple of other things that would have affected that, but particularly around the numbers perspective, understanding it, tracking it, and then the most important thing, making decisions based on those numbers.
And I think that's what businesses don't see. And again, another great story with a client, and this is a much larger client. We created an executive team. We created a dashboard that became a weekly and monthly discussion point that everyone had clarity and transparency on. And this was all aligned to where the business was heading. In the very first monthly meeting, and we were part of that, so we could make sure that we were bringing this to life in the right way for the business. I'm going to get back to numbers will tell a story. In that first monthly meeting when we had, it was a version of the dashboard and it's going to evolve. We had a leadership team talking about key levers in the business and why they weren't performing or why some were exceeding, having conversations about that and actually then making decisions to ensure that the outcome was going to be achieved as a result of the dashboard, which was built from numbers. So, and it wasn't a massive Excel document where I know that everyone looks at that, not me, but most people look at that and they glaze over. I mean, they're falling asleep before you've even got through line 2. But a visual dashboard that shows your key levers in the business and that's what you talk to, change that whole dynamic. And, the second meeting in, we leave that second monthly meeting when there's a review of the previous month, there's a forecast look at what does the next 3 months look like. They are just having different conversations.
And it's funny, and we can look at our own business and the way in which your brain works and the way that my brain works.
Totally different for everyone out there listening. We could not be more different.
Which is why it's so amazing. I look at it from a weekly perspective, and the way that we sort of, not to get too much into it, but the way that we charge is weekly. So I look at it, and in my brain, I know that the weekly amount that comes in is that there's ratios that I look at that go, yep, I'm happy with that. Well, Sharron, she looks at it on a monthly basis, which doesn't really work quite from a weekly basis because it doesn't work out to be exactly 4 weeks every month and stuff like that. And so we sort of run it, Sharron understanding that about me, and knowing that I need to have that sort of information to understand if you do a forecast or cash flow, whatever it looks like to be a weekly, has designed a weekly one for me, and she still looks at her monthly one, which is fine. But so that I can understand in the way that I think, and is that the right way to do it? Probably not. Is that the way I do it? Well, it works back to old mate with the ledger and doing it every day. That's the way that I need to do it, and that's the way that makes sense to me. And part of Juno Advisory and the work that we do is to go, if that's the way that person needs it, I need to create the scenario around that. And there's very few times that we go into a business and totally do a shift. It's more around if they've never looked at numbers before, they start looking at numbers. If they're currently looking at numbers in a way that is comfortable for them and that makes them, we try to work around that type of scenario.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to keeping it simple, understanding what the business needs, but ensuring that you're looking and understanding the right levers.
Correct.
Because I think what we also find is that businesses are looking and reviewing, but they're not the levers that drive change and create opportunity to achieve the outcomes that they're looking for. So it's about aligning all that back in. And, I mean, it is about doing it in a way that a business owner and a team will actually
do and look at
buy in
and use.
Because, I mean, we've done this before, and I'll say very candidly, produce something for a client that we think is going to work and we put it in play and it never gets used. And the reason why that happens is because there's not the buy-in and alignment. So,
and that's because it's either too hard or they feel it's too time consuming, or a lot of the times we haven't got them over that first little part, which is how you actually have to look at the numbers. But okay. From the accounting queen, rapid fire. You ready?
Bring it on.
Biggest mistake business owners make with their numbers?
Confusing revenue with success, and I come back to it. Cash flow is king. Cash.
Wow, not the green, the real,
not the literal,
not the
well, maybe for some businesses,
not the untaxable cash.
I didn't talk about that.
No, everything is taxed. One number that every leader should check weekly.
I talk about operating cash flow, and if it's negative, you've got a problem.
I suppose if it's negative for a week, that's one thing. If there's consistency, that's another. And the big part about that is, why is it negative?
Yep.
And that leads to a whole bunch of other conversations that need to happen. Anyway, this is rapid fire. The most underrated financial tool. Oh, I already know this one. I'm going to answer on your behalf. A rolling 13-week cash flow forecast. Yes?
I mean, I talk about this and I bang on about it all the time, but yes, that's right. And I think that cash flow forecast will tell the truth about your business long before any reporting accountant coming in. Sorry to all those accountants, but yeah, that is the most underrated tool.
The one financial myth that drives you mad.
I think I'll probably say, and again, I'm probably going to offend the accountants out there, and I don't mean to do that, but when businesses say, "Oh, my accountant handles that," I'm like, hang on a sec, you are running your business. And I guess this probably comes into the financial literacy piece. I go, you have to understand it. Your accountant doesn't handle it, might handle it or report on it, but you're in control.
And I think that's, a quarterly catch up versus having a look at weekly dashboard is very, very different. And it allows you to, I would say, create change before it becomes a big problem, which is super important.
Yep.
Quick win for better financial control.
Quick win. I'll come back to literacy. I think it's incredibly important to understand your numbers as a business owner, as a leadership team. And I think the more you understand, the more likely you are to make decisions that will get the result that you're looking for.
And I would say, one of the big focuses is include your leadership team on that if you're a business that has a big enough leadership team, because that is going to give you a huge uplift getting them to understand the numbers as well. Great work, Sharron.
Yeah.
Good rapid fire.
I think when we talk about those key things that we've just spoken about, I think that we see this all the time in businesses, and I think it's something that business owners shouldn't be scared of. And again, we talk about fear stopping us making some decisions or getting more involved in something.
Yep.
I think that's what can happen in businesses. So, and again, like another example that I'll use with a client, I think they would have described, before we did some work in this space, dealing with their numbers was like the plague, like literally using those words. And it took a little bit of time for me to really work with them to go, and again, I'm going to come back to the storytelling. You need to look at it differently. We need to start looking and changing the mindset about how we view the numbers. And I think when you start to work with it with a client around, and it often happens when they get into this panic mode. It's not when things are going well, it's when things just start not to go so well. And so again, for me, it's about, let's stop thinking about it like the plague.
Yep.
Let's start thinking about numbers as telling a story that means our business will do better. And let's start breaking down what creates profitability and cash flow in your business and really working on that. And I mean, this example that I'm thinking of at the moment is when we did that with a client that wasn't doing as well as they wanted to be doing, and we took the time to dig and separate the different types of services that they offered, we found a 40% service delivery that they were working on that was actually not profitable. And what happened as a result of them only looking at a holistic result is that they never realised that. So when we pulled that out and actually really went, hang on a sec, what are the margins on that particular service offering? They were losing money.
Yeah.
Now, this was quite a big change for this business, but we stopped offering that as a service.
Yeah, wow.
We then repriced everything else, and then we focused on what was profitable business. Now, this was not an overnight change in their business, right? So, but as a result of that, when we probably it was a 4-month process, we looked back and they went from what was panic stations, I avoid the numbers like the plague, to we're actually cash flow positive.
Yeah.
We've actually got less services, but we're actually generating more revenue, but not
more profit.
not revenue, but more importantly, more profit.
Yep. It's such a it's a common story, right?
Yeah, it
it's
is,
not.
It is.
We had there's another quick story where this is with a client that is very similar, offered three sort of service offerings as well, and fundamentally from a reporting perspective, and this actually took a fair bit of time and working in conjunction with their accountant, which is something that we do all the time as well, mind you. Where all their revenue was going into one pot and all their costs were going into one pot, but they actually had three very different offerings with three very different teams that they paid very differently across there. And as we sort of started to go in there, we're like, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And we started to break down the revenue into its, we call
Pillars
them
pods,
pillars.
Yeah.
And probably more importantly, the cost, because one of the service offerings costed a lot more to deliver than the other two. And I mean, once we did that, it was exactly the same. And what the story is that's a lost leader, but it gets its clients. And we called bullshit on that, and couldn't have been more right. It was creating nothing. It was a feeling that was nice to have. And the reality is that person felt that they needed to provide that service offering because that's what other businesses of that ilk did. You look back and you look at it now, they're absolutely killing it, of course, but the thought of I have to have that with not based on anything other than gut feel. And back to your point, I agree. If it doesn't feel right, it's not. But on the other side, if it does feel right, you got to check it with data, right? And a lot of that data is financial data. So as we went through and we redistributed and distributed everything, it was so evident that this was actually weighing the business down. Yeah. And it wasn't a lost leader. It didn't drive new growth into the business. And I was like, what the fuck what is this doing here? We gotta get rid of it. And obviously, getting rid of a whole service line, as you would completely know, it's hard and it took time and project plan and stuff like that. But we did it, killing it. And we look back now and we go exactly the same as they're actually making more revenue now because they're putting their efforts into the two service offerings that they're doing. But the profit is absolutely out of this world.
Yeah. And I think when you talk about that gut feel, and again, my father-in-law is in my head a lot when we talk businesses, and Nifty Nev would say, he would say,
I think we should have a Nifty Nev, all episode, the things that he says.
Actually, I could make an episode on that. But he would say, if it doesn't feel right, and if you think that you should be making more than you are, there's probably something in that.
Yeah.
So, and that's where you've got to use the data, use the numbers to tell the story, and trust that gut when it's telling you something.
And I think the finance. I think a lot of people think about, if we look at the finance, it's about cost cutting and this and that, and it's about. It's not. It's about creating clarity so that you can grow sustainably. I can get that out.
Yeah.
I think another quick story around this is a long time ago, and for people who don't know, I had a quarter life crisis, I say, and I opened up a cafe with a good mate of mine. And we opened it in, like, there was a million other cafes in the area and all this kind of stuff. And, there's this, and it's just on finance and about cost cutting. We saw a lot of other cafes not really understanding in the area their data. And what they would do is they would cost cut, right, to try to make the profit that they were looking for. What happens is if you keep driving cost cutting, it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll buy prepackaged chicken as opposed to, bake the chicken ourselves or whatever the example is. And you drive it down so much that your offering becomes undesirable. And we sometimes see that in businesses that focus so much about, pushing the numbers down. There is a scenario that, yes, you need to focus on that, but you also need to focus on what is driving the growth, which are also numbers that you need to be focusing on your dashboard as well.
Yeah.
So when we talk about numbers, yes, this is about financial numbers, but as you start to embrace the financial element, the next building block is embracing operational elements and numbers to support those financial decisions.
Yeah.
And it's always a great story. Talking about the chicken and it becoming undesirable, and you cut too much costs.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I think, if we wrap up, numbers not being so scary is really important for business owners. And I think the work that we do at Juno really helps businesses with that. So, I look at it and go, we need to remember that revenue isn't profit and profit is not cash. So I think that, businesses get caught up in that revenue and sales and that pumping of, everything's going really well. It's much bigger picture than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that bringing your numbers to life, and I literally use that analogy all the time. Get visual, get that data looking in a visual way that makes sense to your business, and it needs to be a part of the weekly conversations. We often talk about, if we're not going to talk about it, we're probably not going to bring it to life, and we're not going to make changes.
100%.
So I think it's really important to find what's going to work in your business, bring it to life, and have conversations about it. But what underpins that is, you have to have some literacy about that. So make it a point to understand your numbers or your leadership team, however big your business is, really understand the levers that are going to drive your business forward.
Yeah. And I suppose, if you know your numbers, you have a view of the future. And that's what we always come back to is you've got to understand your numbers and what it has been to predict or somewhat predict what it could be. And that's always part of this. And if you're looking at your numbers on a weekly basis and you understand them, you're in a pretty good spot to be able to go, this is the track record and this is what it's going to potentially be if we continue doing X and Y and Z. Yep. And that's an absolute killer for the business, because you go in a positive way. You go, when we want our business to go from A to F is where it is, and you can create what that is. Numbers forms one of the platform elements of that. So you can go, well, you got to track all this kind of stuff to go over here. This is what it's going to look like. And then you can overlay the cash flow, the people, the structure, the systems and processes, the IT packages and stuff all into that. Yep. So that's it.
That's it.
I think that's well, we're definitely going to keep this one because the other one's been binned. Sharron, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Adam.
Should we have a little high five? Done.